Welcome, everyone. This is Apogee Live. We are back from our summer break. I want to introduce some of the Apogee team here on the call with us. Daniel, say hello.
Hello.
And Kristen and Dex.
Hi.
All right. Yep, there he is. All right, so we are coming back. We've got a special guest this time. We are talking today with Brian Littleton, the CEO of ShareASale. Hello, Brian.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely great to have you on. We've got a good little crowd. We might pick up some more, but I know that Brian wrote a little song for us to start us off. So
that's true. Let me grab my guitar. It's right behind me.
Entertainment for everyone.
We've never tried this live before with the animals.
Dexter, here's Brian, sing along. Yay.
Can I get a reading? Because I don't have a, thing. Can you hear the guitar okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. This should go well then. It's a Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock Central Time, that is. I've got my headphones on and my webcam up and my laptop's in its dock. Hoffman's on the controls. He might mute me at any time. It's such a joy to see so many friends on the line. Apogee whiz, this is fun. Apogee Live. Chit-chatting away, and it feels like after 5. Apogee whiz, this is fun. Apogee Live. Integrity, advocacy, experience, and the occasional bride. Apogee Live.
That was excellent.
Right.
Great job.
That's our new theme song.
Yeah, we're keeping that
occasional
one.
bribe.
That's excellent.
It's all yours.
Yeah. Especially the occasional bribe at the end. I like that. That's
That
good.
was great.
All right, so Brian, tell us who is Brian Littleton?
Well, from an industry perspective, I founded ShareASale quite a long time ago. It seems like forever, but it was 17 or so years ago. And at my kind of core, I'm an entrepreneur, kind of problem solver. I love business in general. And so after founding that and running that for all this time, outside of doing that, my core passion is really helping people with their businesses. It's led me to a lot of contacts with, the easiest example is like bloggers and whatnot who have had, how do I grow my blog? How do I grow my business? Even smaller agencies and business partners, affiliates, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of who I am, is I love chatting about what people are doing in business and trying to give a little perspective based on the knowledge that I've gleaned over these years.
All right, so what is new with ShareASale this year?
Well, there's a lot new, obviously. In January, we announced the acquisition where Awin acquired ShareASale, Awin being a very large network in Europe and has a presence here in the US as well, obviously, that people are aware of. And so this year has been really exciting in terms of, for the first time in 17 years, I got to talk to other people that were in the network business and share some ideas as to, what people were doing in our scope of the world. As you can imagine, I could never call up any of my other network competitors and just say like, hey guys, having problems in this area, could you help me out? Whether it's a tracking thing or a publisher that's giving trouble or even just a strategy. So that in and of itself has been really exciting for both myself and the ShareASale team who's here, who's had the same kind of tunnel vision that I've had for all those years. So building up those things that we can do together, whether it's helping each other on tracking, which has been a big one, obviously, and recruiting publishers in here and there, that kind of thing. It's been a lot of that type of work and really exciting. It'll be even more exciting, I think, for the client side in 2018 as we put all this work together that we've been doing in 2017 and try to figure out how we can take that to the market, which is going to be really exciting for people, I think.
Now, I know you had a joint booth at Affiliate Summit East. Is there anything else that has been different this year?
The joint booth was a first thing for Affiliate Summit East, and we'll probably continue there. The biggest thing that we were able to do is take some of the AWIN programs in the U.S. and also cross-launch those on ShareASale. So you may have seen a few of those come across in terms of the new launches, which has been really exciting for us, trying to solve problems for both sets of clients and make it really easy for them to take advantage of those benefits without having to do double the work. So that's kind of the other big joint thing that we've been involved in. But like I said, there's going to be a lot more coming up as we kind of sort out some of those things that companies need to sort out in these situations.
So earlier this year, I know you rolled out a new version of the merchant interface. When is the affiliate interface coming?
It should be really any time. I mean, we're testing, getting bugs, all that kind of stuff right now, and so it should be anytime we deem that it's complete at that point. There still will obviously be some bugs that I'm sure people will tell me about, but it's coming up really soon, and it'll look a lot like the merchant interface that you've kind of gotten used to over the course of the last 9 months or so, and obviously just be geared towards those affiliates. A real big focus on highlighting retailers and the merchant search process, which we felt like was a pretty big weakness from the affiliate perspective and the interface as it is right now today. So taking the examples that we had from, for example, our lookbook, our catalog, which has helped us to explain affiliate marketing to someone who's a blogger or an influencer who doesn't really get it, our world necessarily, but they like to see the catalog and the lookbook and the pictures of products and things along those lines. So it's more centered around that kind of idea. That'll be the biggest change for people, and I think the biggest source of questions as we launch it, but it should be very soon.
I saw a preview of it at the blogger pop-up before Affiliate Summit, and
Oh, good.
Really pretty. I'm really excited about it. I've been kind of sitting here tapping my nails like, all right, when's this coming? It's like, what's this?
Well, it's definitely a lot prettier. There's no doubt about that. Unfortunately, I was probably the core designer on the other one, and now we have official, more professional people to do that.
I've always, I know this is at your expense, but I've always kind of enjoyed the people that have mocked the interface design in the past on social media and at the shows, but I've always loved how it works. Mm-hmm. So I've always told everyone, but when you really get into it, it works. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it works.
Yeah. Well, there's no winning that game. I can tell that. Anybody who's ever developed something for someone, there's no winning that game. We've had, believe it or not, and this is shocking to me because I understand the shortcomings of its design, but we've had people, just as equal number of people, tell me like, oh, they love it. They love how easy it is and how, just the look of it appeals to them. And I'm always kind of surprised, but I take that as well. So it's not a game you can win, but we try to improve on things that are obvious that need improvement, the search being one of them, and just obviously modernizing the look. This will be like the maybe 6th or 7th time we've done this over the years. If you look back at the first one, it's like this. You can't even look at the screen.
Well, I remember probably 2007, 2008. I remember that version.
Yeah, that was like the third one too. I mean, the ones before that were, I should save them. There's like a little Monopoly man on one of them, and it's bad.
All right, so the hardest question, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Is there going to be a think tank in 2018?
I can tell you, yes, there's going to be a think tank in 2018. We're working on the scheduling now in terms of how that works out. It'll probably be an event that you'll see a lot of the benefits of AWIN's acquisition of ShareASale on display. And there definitely will be a think tank. Anybody who's listening from my marketing department is now on the spot.
Awesome. All right. Now I think I'm done with my questions. Does anyone else want to, oh, by the way, before we get started, we're going to be recording for another 30 minutes and then we're going to go offline. So I'm going to stop recording. And if anybody wants to ask questions that they don't want on YouTube forever, you can save your questions and Brian's going to stick around. But if you've got anything, any general questions that you want to talk right now out in the open, now's your chance. And somebody better start something.
I'll start. I think one of the best things you come up with in the last couple of years or so is, from my perspective and the affiliate perspective, is the bookmarklet. But it's still in beta, and it seems to work really well for me. I just wonder if there's any continuing problems with it, any issues that we should be aware of, since it is still in beta after like a year or 2 years.
Sure. So once you get your link from the bookmarklet, you're working off of core technology that's a tracking link, just like any other link that you might have. So everything there is going to work. You should expect that to work the same as any other link you might get from the interface. The bookmarklet itself is a tool that we use to try to allow an affiliate to get a link a lot faster. So it sits on the top of your browser, and if you're browsing on a merchant site like a Fanatics, for example, and you click that button, it'll give you a link for that specific product right away. That makes it a lot quicker to get that link, but it does require a lot of looking up and behind the scenes stuff to make sure that we're giving you the right link, meaning we're matching up the product that you're seeing on the screen at fanatics.com and we're giving you a link that goes directly to that product. Because retailers are joining every day, and their data feed structures are complicated oftentimes. Some merchants that will go unnamed even change their data feed structure every once in a while, and we have to do a bunch of stuff. But you know, that's kind of perpetually an issue there, where we're still sorting it out. The product itself probably doesn't need to be in beta anymore. That's probably something that we should change around. But it is something that will always continue to evolve, just because of those recognition structures and things. But it's a good question. We should take care of that.
Great. Yeah, I've had very little problems with it. I can think of only one time where I clicked on it and a different product came up than what was on the page.
Yeah. It happens every once in a while, and it's just due to those structures, and you know, really data problems are going to lead to that. I mean, a kind of a glaring example, although this might not actually happen in real life, but you know, retailers sell as well oftentimes on marketplaces like an Amazon or something like that, and they might even toss in an Amazon link right into an affiliate banner, which would get flagged and everything, so it wouldn't necessarily happen. But you can imagine where someone would try to do that, and then, you know, trying to match up something with the domain that doesn't work, or they change over to a new CDN platform that's hosting all their images. Things along those lines are going to be you know, challenges that you need to meet in terms of our technology, but it's a constantly evolving thing.
Brian, what excites you in terms of the opportunities for like international growth with the different AWIN platforms?
So the international stuff for me is one of the most exciting things with regard to the acquisition, because AWIN is a dominant market player in the European markets, as well as now with their strategic partnership in Australia, which is kind of a leaping point into Asia and all those kinds of areas. ShareASale always had clients in these areas, right? I mean, you guys, people that have been here forever, know all this, but for the sake of the audience, we had clients in the UK and France and Germany and all over the world because of our kind of unique self-service nature of the platform that fit into some models. But we didn't have offices in London, for example, or France, or things along those lines. And so the acquisition really allows us to immediately work with folks that are on the ground there in those markets. If a brand is really interested in the UK or France or Germany or some of those more mature markets over in Europe, we're able to very quickly take advantage of our knowledge in both in order to get you running. And I think the most exciting part for me is when we can make that more seamless for a either direction, a U.S. based advertiser, for example, really more like clicking a button to access things in other countries as opposed to one-off launches. We're in a position where we can do more there than most platforms, and so we need to take advantage of that. I'm excited for it. It's definitely something that you'll start to see pieces of as we roll some of the things out.
Who's next?
I'll be next. Brian, you mentioned them before when you were, it was like the first chance you had to speak to another network and figure out, what kind of problems you were having, what kind of solutions are you finding. What was that like, and what did you get out of that? I mean, are you seeing that everyone has the same problems? Are they all attempting different strategies, or did you say, oh wow, we're thinking along the same lines?
All of the above. I mean, it's just been really great. And, as I said at the time of the acquisition, and I think was on a lot of the press releases and things along those lines, this was really about choosing an acquirer that we thought was the best fit for ShareASale. Awin has a remarkable track record, great culture that's similar to ours, a great fit for our business. And so I didn't expect to then have conversations that were too far apart, like I didn't expect them to say like, oh yeah, all of our publishers are, all this stuff that we would never allow or something like that. We'd already kind of figured that out. But the best part, is looking at very specific technological problems that we had solved over the years, even going back to say like a problem that would have been like in 2004, 2005, all that kind of stuff, because the core group of Awin, of course, has been around that long as well. So, solving things like in the past with cookie stuffing and adware, and now going through to PPC and all these kinds of things that are existing, cross-device tracking, all that kind of stuff. You solve them on your own in the best way that you can, and then you take them to market and you let the market decide whether they're any good. But being able to chat with people on how they also did those things was really, really beneficial, and I think helped both of those organizations immensely, and is still going to do so as we put some things together.
Brian, I'll jump in.
Sure.
I know you've done a lot of panels over the last few years about attribution.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had a conversation about 2.5 years ago about the upcoming conversion lines technology that you had. We're using that now in our programs. How widespread is that in your network? How many other programs are using conversion lines?
You're the only one. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
You never told him something like that, Brian. Come on.
You are the innovator.
Aftermath.
Get ready for some out of context quotes on his.
Yeah, don't. You can't tell him that. I'll never do the end of it. It's
on YouTube. It's the full context. I'm sure will be shown. It's very, very prevalent, and that is because I think of a couple different reasons. One, you can very quickly solve kind of some core attribution problems. All of the things that everybody knows about: late checkout, coupon loyalty, and kind of sometimes that either interference or you may even call it influence or help in terms of a sale. Very easy to do that, but also working with different types of publishers now. It's so common to have really multiple channels inside of your affiliate channel. To simplify it and talk about just publishers that are considered to be top of funnel publishers, whether you have media partners or influencers, and then you have the other side of the funnel, the closing group, the loyalty and the coupon and all the stuff that we know works to help push a consumer past that question stage in their buy cycle. So you can look at those two things differently. They're really different channels inside your program, and because it's so easy to set up a conversion line, even though it looks hard on the screen sometimes. But once you kind of get the idea of creating these separate channels, because it's so easy and so fast, people are really starting to take to it for that specific purpose of either, separating out a set of affiliates, or maybe just one affiliate that's really a key partner that you want to work with on more of a top click scenario, or working with a group that you want to set up as influencers. It's very, very prevalent now, and we're seeing it as kind of the prime and the main way that advertisers are using our attribution tools. Obviously, for years it was involved with the clickstream stuff, which Leapfrog and all those things that we had for years, which are still very much usable, but the conversion lines we're finding people find so easy to set up that they are very, very prevalent.
So with regard to conversion lines then, right now we have to request they be set up the first time on an account, but then we can go in and modify and add new ones and things like that. Is there a timeline where you guys are planning on, I guess, flipping a switch where you'll allow us to go in and just set them up ourselves without having to request them the first time?
I mean, sure. We don't really have a problem with doing that. It was obviously there in the beginning, because the first time you stare at a conversion line screen, you're just going to say, "What is this?" You need to kind of walk through it and realize what you're building and how it's on the screen and all that kind of stuff. But certainly for an experienced user, it makes perfect sense. And so we could probably, waiver that for agency clients, for example, or people that we knew had commonly set things up. As far as opening that up, I think it'll be probably, in terms of to everyone, I mean, the next kind of iteration of our merchant interface design, because that page didn't really change all that much, right? It's kind of it's an old page stuffed into a new interface. Right. Because it is a very complicated thing to try to put on a screen, an entire attribution model. So when we redo that and make it look a little better, we'll probably open it up at that point and still monitor what people are doing, because you can obviously break everything in about 3 clicks, and set up your program to only give money to Greg on every sale, and that there's probably a name for that model. But we'll do that when we come up with a better way to represent it all. But certainly from an agency perspective, with Apogee, we could definitely say, like, hey, you guys know what you're doing. Let's just let you do it. We could probably set that up pretty quick.
But then what would Tiffany do?
I imagine that you would still have questions.
Yeah.
Inside the rules, because a conversion line is really making a decision about which channel or which group of publishers to work with on a specific sale, or make a choice between a publisher. But at that point, then once you choose who you're going to commission, it's about how much. And so the rules that come into play in terms of tracking versus individual SKUs or bonus programs or off of creatives or sign-up sources, all that stuff is still there and on that page. So it's pretty complex.
Do any of the affiliates have questions about conversion lines or attribution? Because now's the time to ask. Anyone, please?
Do you all understand what it is and how it works and what it's for?
I have a question. So you have to, like, an OPM or a merchant has to choose to set up the conversion line splits. Like, that's not something that is automatically set up. They get to decide to do that, correct?
Yeah, they decide at some point that they have a problem, or call it a problem, that they need to solve with these conversion lines. And so they go in and try to set up the individual channels that are going to make up their affiliate program. There are a million reasons why you might do it. And even some that don't include the affiliate channel, for example, you can run multiple channels through the conversion lines. You could run paid search through the conversion lines if you wanted to. You could run your own retailers' email marketing through conversion lines to stop that kind of, sometimes there's a conflict, right, between channels and what retailers perceive to be their own efforts versus affiliate. There's all kinds of things that you could set up. We like to talk to retailers ahead of time when they're setting it up, because, like I said, you can break a lot of things, and you need to be aware of some of the issues that you're kind of solving for, to make sure that you're not making things worse. but yeah, it's something the merchant has to choose. They go in, they set it up. By default, it's not there.
Can they set it up later, like after, like later down the line? So say, I've been talking to a lot of bloggers who are frustrated like Dexter and are not getting commissions that they believe they're losing out to coupon loyalty sites. If they were to then speak to, you know, their manager, their program manager or whatever, would they be able to then set up conversion lines later?
This is how our company meetings go all the time.
That talk, that was fun.
That's definitely the case, and is usually why these things come up. And it's not always about making a preference between a blogger and a loyalty site, but making sure that interaction is the way that the retailer wants it. You know, very commonly now there are duplicate commissions that are being paid. There's an assist or an influencer role that's, you know, the old definition of influencer, which was really coupon and loyalty, now has turned into, you know, an influencer being an Instagram post or whatnot. But in the old definition, like, you still have that kind of transaction available on a conversion line. But absolutely, it's usually something that is a response to a problem. The retailer decides, like, hey, I am having a problem with something. If it's coupon, maybe. If it's something else, could be paid search, but that's interfering with what I feel is maybe some of these blogger efforts over here or these Instagrammer efforts over here. So I want to separate those two things out, and I want to make sure that they're both getting what they need. And it's flexible enough to allow both to sit there and be very beneficial to both parties. But yes, it comes with a problem, starting with a problem, and then solving it by putting those lines together. And they are called conversion lines because they are lines of a program. If you think about them, like, they're horizontal on the screen, but a transaction looks down at them vertically and decides, like, you know, who's my attribution channel at the top, my first set of rules that I want to go through, then I want to go through my second set of rules to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for what my goals are. But yeah, it starts with typically a problem.
Cool.
Brian, I've got
specifically to that, like, if that is the problem, if the perceived problem, and if they've, you know, it's important to do some research as well and make sure that the data backs this up and it's not just a perception of a problem, but it's a real problem in their program. It is a problem that you can now solve with conversion lines in about 30 seconds. And so if the bloggers that you're talking to have that concern, they should definitely discuss it with their the managers on the program and have them talk to us, or better yet, just hire Apogee, and then it'll all be taken care of.
I mean, yeah, duh. All right, thank you, Brian.
Sure.
All right, so one request, since you're here and your marketing department is going to be watching this later, I would love more case studies, even if they're anonymous case studies, but more information about what other programs are doing. Sometimes we feel like we're just stumbling in the dark trying to figure some of this out, and we have great support from ShareASale, but I would love some best practices, even if they're anonymous and no brand mentioned. I would love to know what other brands are doing with the technology, either conversion lines or anywhere in the network. You know, what works and what can they share with others like us?
Yes, we are working on a few things along those lines. It's always a tricky prospect for us because of that. You know, when someone figures something out, sometimes they don't want us to tell other people, those kinds of things. But we do have enough folks that are willing participants and enough anonymous things to put together some ideas in terms of, you know, what can be seen when you do implement a conversion line, or if you implement something is even more advanced, like an add to cart or a growth in cart type of tracking. I mean, some of these things are really, really granular and detailed, and it's important to know how they've worked out, at least for a couple people, before you really go into them. So we are working on those things. The marketing team is already on the spot with the think tank, so I see no further problem in putting them on the spot to do some further work. But this is also, if I can go all the way back to the beginning of what I was talking about, the acquisition from AWIN makes us a lot stronger in this area as well. If you've ever read any of AWIN's documents, case studies, things along those lines, I would highly recommend it. Their market is very mature in the UK, and their leadership position in the UK is kind of unquestioned. And so a lot of those case studies are really interesting in terms of what they've been putting out. And so we'll get some knowledge and things from them as well on these, and put some good content together.
Excellent.
Hey, I got a quick question since we're talking granular. You mentioned, or I guess my true question is, will there be any changes to the actual dashboard since you've, merged together, more specifically in like the AF tracking links? Like, is there a way for us to sort it all out, streamline it, get rid of the old stuff and track? I mean, I can break it down monthly and all that good stuff, but I want to know time after time what works, not have to look through 300 lines of coding to find what I used and what I didn't use.
Sure. I feel like there were two questions there. One about things changing with regard to the acquisition, and then the second part about AF tracking. So let me go with the first one first. On the AWIN acquisition side, you're not going to see any differences in the interface that don't benefit you in the short term. We're working on trying to make things available, make knowledge available, all those kinds of things. But your work within the ShareASale interface and within the AWIN interface will be the same, as you've gotten used to.
Will we be merging over to one? Because I actually use both platforms.
In the short term, you're going to be continuing to use both. The benefits that you'll have will be the things that you may have already seen, such as being able to access an AWIN platform from the ShareASale platform, or the vice versa. When we get some of those things done, you're also going to have some more, awareness and promotion across those two types of things. But they're both very mature platforms that that serve their purpose and serve their clients very well. So there's, it's important to keep both of those things running and active. And from a reporting standpoint, in terms of those links, the AF tracking links, you're talking about specifically the sub ID type of links that you throw in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have been doing a lot of work on that for the new interface itself, because it's a much more prevalent thing now than it was maybe 5 years ago. And it's used much more differently now than it was. I mean, now publishers are coming in, and they often have a lot of sub-publishers to themselves, some influencer networks. This was easier to think about from a cashback perspective, but now there's influencer networks, or there's even just a group of 3 or 4 influencers or bloggers or whatever that are working together. Like, it's much more prevalent, so it's much more important for us to be able to break that out cleanly. I'd have to look at your stuff to really tell you whether there's a different way that you should look at it or download it or something. And I can definitely do that. But if you're, for example, you can make those reports a little easier to use just by the way that you use and put data into AFTRAC in the first place. So let me look at it. I know how to get a hold of you, so I'll let you know. But it's an important report that I think we're taking a good look at with this new interface. So it should see some improvements at least.
Yeah, I use it all the time. So I think it's a great tool.
Do you have any blog posts or anything about the AFTRAC and how to do that on ShareASale, Brian?
Probably. I'd have to look it up and see if there's one out there outside of just searching. But for anyone who's listening, the AFTRAC is basically a parameter that you can add as a publisher and affiliate. You can add data to the link that you're sending to ShareASale, which we will then just basically pair it back to you on a transaction. So if you have 2 different sites and you want to know which one of your sites is generating a sale or a click, you can put site A in the AFTRAC value of a link, and you can put site B in the other one, and they'll track exactly the same, but they will report back to you as being 2 separate things. People use it very commonly in the ways that we just talked about, 2 different sites, or they're using paid venues, paid search, for example, and they want to know which keywords are working. An influencer network would use it to make sure that their proper influencer was being paid on kind of a sub-network type of arrangement. Cashback would use it to make sure they were paying the right person in cashback, all those kinds of things. And once you start using it, it's extremely flexible. The reporting is what we were talking about. It needs to be improved a little bit, which was what we're working on. It's all there. It's just sometimes it's like data, and that needs to get a little better.
So we put the marketing team on the spot. Now I want to put the tech team on the spot. The API is on version 2.8 right now. And we talked about the UI reporting and things like that. Are there any plans for updates to the API coming along?
I would have to go to get some more details on that from you. It's kind of an ongoing thing, obviously, adding in reports, and the main focus of that team right now is getting that affiliate interface up and launched.
Sure.
So any of those API things would be coming probably shortly after that if they've been working on those kind of in conjunction. But the API is also a living thing as it is. And so we are commonly making calls, creating things for people that they need, and can usually put something together as a new report and get it out there if there's something specific that you're looking for. That you do run into problems every once in a while with that and the usage and all those types of things that we have to be concerned about, but we're usually able to put something together for you if you have a plan in terms of what you need from the reporting. I'll follow up with you though, especially on the API stuff, and make sure that we're letting people know ahead of a time on the API stuff, because sometimes that can be a problem.
Sure.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left before we stop recording. We haven't heard from the CTO in Buffalo, New York. Does he have anything to say? Mr. Nagel?
No, I'm busy working getting Al on the project.
But at least you showed up today, so thank you. Marcia, do you have anything for Brian?
I actually do have a question. I am still confused on attribution and redirection. So when a merchant goes in and I guess pays Google for redirection or whoever they pay, how does the attribution work? Because we'll spend hours and hours creating a post, and then 2 minutes later, the products show up in the redirection. Do we get credit? Does the affiliate end up getting credit for that? Do you know what I'm saying?
On the redirection, you're talking about their own internal attribution tools, or you're talking about something like a
I think redirection might be the wrong word. It's when you've clicked on something and it pops up in the sidebar or in an ad that, so if you're just doing a Google search, Googling around, and eventually an hour later you see something show up in an ad about what you've just looked at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like a retargeting ad that somebody has.
Yeah. How does it work in terms of attribution?
It could work differently depending on a retailer's choices and programs. There are even retargeting affiliates as well that could be, operating basically in the same affiliate space as you are. And then at that point, it would depend on how they had set up their affiliate attribution, whether that's using a conversion line or something else to make sure that both publishers were getting credit for it, or whatever mix they deemed was important. This is one of those issues that I think, especially when you're working with a retailer very heavily, and you are writing a lot of content and a lot of posts, that you should definitely discuss with them how they are doing that themselves. Most of the time, I think you're going to find that their retargeting channel and their affiliate channel are probably separate. And so a click-through affiliate would probably still receive credit in those cases for a conversion. But it is an important distinction, because if you send traffic and then for the next 30 days that person is shown that face over and over and over again, that could while aiding conversion, it's a constant threat to your own cookie in terms of this, just the affiliate channel. So
Yes.
I would have that conversation with them, especially on the ones where you have a lot of traffic going through. It's the retargeting is a very interesting industry that's worth a whole another hour's worth of conversation in terms of the kind of ego marketing, as I call it. But it's a conversation you should probably have with them independently, because it's going to differ. It's not going to be a global answer there.
I can answer that, Marcia. For Apogee, we do have retargeting affiliates in our programs, and if they close on your sale, the commission is split.
Okay.
Via conversion lines.
Correct.
To bring it back to the conversation earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Alan, you got anything? I just decided to call you out.
Well, that's okay. I don't have anything, just enjoying listening. Appreciate the time.
Okay. All right, Buck. Buck, we can't hear you.
Can't hear Buck.
You're not muted, but we couldn't hear you. All right.
Well,
Brian, any final thoughts?
I'm sorry. One problem that's been around for a long, long time that doesn't seem to have changed is the problem with merchants going temporarily offline and staying there for months, in some cases years.
Thank you.
Any progress on fixing that problem?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's definitely been progress. It's still a problem. Some of this comes down to pure volume. We're launching something like 125 to 150 programs every month, and those retailers operate their businesses the way that they operate them, and that can sometimes lead to some of these issues. We have literally a whole pod of people that are working on people that are offline at any given time. The focus is to bring them back. The focus is to make sure that the transactions that are tracking even while things are offline are paid, all those kinds of things, and getting those people back up and running. And that has been very successful in terms of lowering the number of people that are, I would say, the true transaction generating merchants going offline. It's not as big of a problem as it was maybe 10 years ago, when less of those processes were in place. The issue of someone going offline and just sitting there forever, it's a little bit of a catch-22. If we're unable to get them back on board, we're not getting responses from them, we're not having any luck contacting them, we really have two choices. We can close their program, or we can just let it sit there offline. And I don't know that either one is really any better than the other, because if closing the program, you're obviously not getting any benefit from that. You can no longer work in that program, et cetera, et cetera. And leaving it offline, you're unable to make a commission off of those links. There is at least a possibility at that point that that person might come back and provide some benefit to you later on down the road, which is why we generally decide to try to leave things there until we can finally get a hold of them. But it has been, from the pure volume perspective, challenging, because there's a lot of those smaller retailers who might even forget that they have an affiliate program in the first place. I always find that the best thing to do in these situations is to let us know what the one that you're having a problem with, because there's really two different problems. If a retailer is going like this and they're offline, online, offline, online, on, we can much more easily work with that retailer to try to get their auto deposit settings fixed, or have a discussion with them about it, anything along those lines, to solve that problem for you specifically, so that you don't have that up and down. That's one problem. Second one, if you've got somebody in your list that's been offline for a long period of time, and it's causing you a problem, to let us know, because we do close those programs we work on it kind of on a quarterly basis or whatnot and try to look at what the odds are of maybe getting somebody back on. But if you see somebody, let us know. We're always happy to kind of work on it and maybe close those out. But that's the whole issue. It's a bit of a catch-22. It's similar to the idea of, publishers and all those things that are also somewhat inactive. There's merchants that are asking that question from the other side. The publisher's gone inactive, or they can't get a hold of them, or things along those lines. Like, at the end of the day, just getting rid of them, while it might make a report look cleaner, doesn't really solve a problem, in terms of making anything better for anyone. Doesn't make anybody any more money anyway.
That's true.
Along that line, though, one thing that would be helpful is I use your discovery tool to see if a merchant is in ShareASale first before I go looking at other networks. And I know in one case last holiday season, there was a particular merchant that we found, and we applied to their program and were accepted, but they were offline. So it would be helpful if that program, if that could be flagged in the discovery tool, along with the other information that's shown, is that the merchant is temporarily offline.
Yes, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, that's definitely a type of problem we could solve in terms of getting that information in there for you. We would still want to, at that point, especially if they're active and approving you in a program. And I don't mean to simplify this, but the odds are very good that retailer just didn't notice that they were offline. They were logging in and accepting you and thinking that everything was okay. And some folks just don't, put two and two together with all the reporting and things. So we would want to get a hold of them and try to fix that situation. But that's the kind of thing that sometimes just requires a quick little email to our group and say, like, hey, I just got approved for this program, but they're offline and they've been that way for 3 months. Can you fix this up or whatever? We can try and do that. The odds are good that we've already tried, but we can try again with them, because sometimes all it takes is that one little thing that they've got a publisher that actually is looking to promote them, and maybe they felt like, hey, this program's not going anywhere, so I don't need to put money in until it does. And then they've got a publisher that wants to promote them, and so we can get back to them and get them back online. I mean, some of these retailers that are, especially the smallest of the retailers, they do run their businesses the way they run them, and sometimes it takes that one little thing to push them in a different direction. But I love the idea of showing the information on the product discovery tool, because one of the ways we've tried to just help publishers in general, affiliates in general, is like, let's give them as much information as we can about this program, which is why we show, like, for example, the offline dates, how many times they've gone offline. Because if you're joining a program and you see that they've been offline 73 times in the last year, that's hopefully a signal to you that it's probably likely to continue, and you may want to reconsider joining that one, or at least talking to them about it or talking to us about it. Whereas if you see a program that's been consistently online for 2 years, that's a good, thing for you to have, piece of information. So we'll work on that with the discovery tool. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Lynn,
And thanks to Greg also for letting us know about the offline online thing too. I didn't even know about that until Greg showed it to me. And yeah, we've been using that a lot now.
Yeah, it helps just to have the knowledge. I mean, like I said, some people are going to be like this, and that's a red flag,
Right. Just one other thing on the new interface. Any chance that on the affiliate homepage we could see a breakdown of like total commissions to date, then what's new and what's locked? It would be really helpful. I like to be able to go in the month and kind of see where the things are sitting, as far as me being able to budget for writers and developers and things like that, without having to go through and run the report, send it out Excel and total it up. And
there's definitely things along those lines. That was one of the kind of main things we were looking at, is trying to make the balance situation look a little smoother on the homepage. So my hope is that what we did will make that a little easier for you. But I'll definitely look at it again. But that's definitely in there.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right, let's wrap this up so we can take it offline. The last couple questions have been great, and I want to thank Brian for his transparency and his availability and his access for the last 15, 17 years to affiliates in instances like this, and more importantly at the think tank, the final session is called Things We Need to Fix. And I've been a particular fan of that session for about the last 10 years. So,
which is no surprise to anybody.
Yeah. So Brian, how can affiliates, merchants reach out to you or someone on the team? Is there's still a page called Things We Need to Fix? How can they get to you?
Yeah, so let me look it up here and make sure I give you the right URL. But am I able to just put this in chat for everybody? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you can, but I'll also put it in the show notes.
Okay, I'm just going to give it to you, and that way you can do as needed. But the URL is shareasale.com/fixit, and that is an extension of the Things We Need to Fix session, and it's completely anonymous. So you can say whatever you want in there, and it goes to our team in terms of who's gonna fix it. We wanted it to be anonymous because sometimes there are things that you're driving you nuts on our interface, and you don't want to sound like you're nagging me or nagging one of our team members or something. So you just put it in there anonymously, and we will not know who you are. You can put your name in there, which I can tell you is really helpful, especially if you ask questions about your specific account, because there's nothing quite like getting a question about an account and then not knowing how to reach out. That's really makes it really hard. But that's the URL, and you can put whatever you want in there.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put that in the blog post in the show notes, even though it's not a show, Daniel. It's a conference call. All right. Thank you very much. This has been a great Apogee Live. We're going to stay on after I hit or stop recording, and we can ask Brian some really good, juicy questions. This has been Apogee Live.